Good afternoon. Selamat pagi and welcome to Monash Indonesia Talks, the Monash University PhD series. We're going to get started in just a moment and I'll introduce our first speaker. But before we do, just a quick word on the scheduling of today's events. So today's event is a three-part series, and that means there'll be three separate sessions with different information in each session. So if you have registered for more than one session, please stay for the rest of the day because you'll be learning all sorts of new information. So just a quick word on housekeeping as well. You'll notice that all the participants are on mute. That's just so we can eliminate any background noise. But there will be the opportunity at the end of each session for you to ask some questions. We'll open it up to maybe some questions from the participants spoken, so you can raise your hand, and then maybe we'll look at the Q&A box at the bottom for written questions as well. So we'll get started now, and I'm very excited to introduce our first speaker, Professor Sharon Ricardo. Professor Sharon Ricardo is the Academic Director of the Monash Graduate Research Office, and she works alongside the Vice Provost, Faculty and Graduate Affairs to make decisions and provide guidance on a range of complex academic matters related to graduate research. Professor Ricardo obtained her PhD from the University of Melbourne in 1994. She completed a postdoctorate at Pennsylvania State University for 6 years before commencing at Monash in 2000. She has received numerous awards for her research contribution in the field of kidney disease and regenerative medicine. And she is currently a research group leader in the Faculty of Medicine, Nursing and Health Sciences. So Professor Ricardo, over to you.
Thanks so much, Vicky, and welcome everyone. It's so nice to see so many people joining me and zooming in today. So I'm just going to share my screen. I've got a bit of a talk here to show you. And I'm going to give two talks today. The first one is really going to focus on the overview of Monash and also what we call the Monash doctoral program. And I'll talk to you in the second part today more about admissions, so getting into detailed specifics about the admission process and also scholarships that are available. So, introducing Monash. Monash is based in Melbourne, in Australia. It's quite a young university. It was established in 1958, and originally in 1961, it only had 347 students. Now we are a university of more than 72,000 students, and these are located across different campuses in Australia and also internationally, and I'll go into that. But we are quite a young contemporary university, and I think it's a very progressive university, and we're also very focused on student experience and what you would get out of your PhD or degrees. We are actually also ranked in the top 1% internationally, and there's a number of criteria that you can look at our world rankings. Probably most importantly, in the Times Higher Education World Ranking, we're ranked number 75, which is just fantastic, and that's really due to our research infrastructure, the standard of teaching, indeed, and just the experience that you'd receive at the university. We're very focused on employability as well, and looking at the Good Universities guys in 2008, Monash was actually awarded 5 stars for staff qualification, student demand, and also student retention. So the focus would be on you and your experience. So looking further into some of the great research and teaching that we have at Monash, Monash is ranked in the top 100 of world universities and ranked in the top 50 in a number of different streams. In particular, we're very focused on pharmacy and pharmacology, mineral and mining engineering, education, nursing, performing arts, civil and structural engineering, chemical engineering, anatomy and physiology, which are close to my heart because I used to be in the anatomy department for many, many years, philosophy, and also medicine. Very, very big faculty of medicine, which actually makes up about 25% of all PhD student enrolments. And we're based in Melbourne. Melbourne is a coastal town. It's been voted the most livable city for a number of years now. Fantastic public transport, great healthcare. It's a very scenic city itself with great food, and Monash campuses are distributed throughout the CBD and in a place called Clayton, which is about 30 minutes from the central business district. But it's a very pretty and livable city and great performing arts as well. We also have a global footprint and really focus on our international cohort. We actually have students at Monash from more than 170 different countries throughout the world. Monash itself has other campuses in Italy. We have a very good joint PhD program with India, China. We have a facility, Monash Malaysia, which has about 370 PhD students currently in a number of different faculties, and of course also in Australia. A lot of our students study away and study abroad, and there are many different experiences available for this, and they go to more than 4,500 students travel to different places throughout the world. So we're really an international outlooking university, which is fantastic. Now within Melbourne, I talked about the central business district here. You can see the bay, the Port Phillip Bay here. So it is indeed a coastal university. We have students in Parkville. This is mainly focused in pharmacy. We have students in Caulfield, business economics, art, design and architecture, for example, just being a few. Clayton is our main campus of the university, where you can find all the different faculties, and I'll talk in detail on this in the next slide. And then we have the Peninsula campus, which is about 45 minutes from the Clayton campus, and here you'll find nursing, ambulance, physiotherapy, for example. So we are spread across different campuses across Melbourne. Now, going further into what faculties, we have 10 faculties and 2 institutes, and I'll go through these. So our faculties are art, design and architecture, arts, business and economics, education, engineering, IT, faculty of law, medicine, nursing and health sciences, which has within itself about 20 different institutes that make up this large faculty, pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences, science, and our 2 institutes are our Accident Research Centre and also another one called Sustainable Development Institute. So within these faculties and our institutes, our PhD students, or hopefully you as a PhD student, would be based. And we have a program called the Monash Doctoral Program at the university. And this was really developed about 2 years ago. The background behind the Monash Doctoral Program is we are aware now that PhD students who graduate will go into all different fields. You may go into academia or research, but most of our graduates go into a number of different fields. And in order to do this, to increase that employability that I was talking about, you do need, as part of your PhD, to have a number of toolkits, if you like, and be great at management or research or public speaking, developed a range of different professional attributes that will make you more employable. So our Monash PhD is not just about the thesis or the papers, but it's really about developing you as an individual. So the Monash Doctoral Program, you'll gain access to very high quality supervision. We're quite proud at Monash of the quality as supervisors that you would have access to. We also pride ourselves in leading research infrastructure. So what I mean by this is that there's a number of research platforms that you can use as a student. And in these research platforms, you have state-of-the-art equipment and technology, particularly in the STEM fields, of course. And you also have technicians in those platforms that will assist you and train you in whatever you need to do. So it really is truly a world-class research environment. I've actually personally been at Monash for about 20 years now, based in the Faculty of Medicine, Nursing and Health Sciences. And the reason I've been here so long and my research has also grown so much is because of the infrastructure and what Monash actually puts back into its research environment. International networks, as well as I mentioned, you'll also have access to internships, for example, and a number of professional development opportunities, both online as well as some face-to-face options, but obviously Zoom currently these days is very popular. So the Monash doctoral program, so this is basically support for you as a PhD student. It's in order to help you complete your research project. There is a lot of different management, for example, helping you with English, helping you with writing. And there's also a number of different online opportunities that can help you develop a broad range of skills that will assist you not only in your PhD, but in whatever career you go on to achieve afterwards. And so we really pride ourselves in the students that complete a PhD at Monash in making an impact, not only in academia, but also industry or other related fields such as government or community, for example. So the Monash doctoral program within your research project, we expect it to be in depth, a supervised research project. Every PhD student at Monash has a minimum of 2 supervisors that will assist you along the way. And in the end, it will help you resolve your project and a thesis or publications that make an original contribution to knowledge. Our projects are conceived at the outset, for example, so it's a high feasibility for you to complete within a 3 to 4 year time frame. Our theses are online, so it's actually a PDF that is sent off to examination. It's 80,000 word limit. Very, very common at Monash, and we really do encourage this, is for students to submit a thesis that includes published works. So here a number of papers can be submitted as your thesis together with traditional chapters as well. And of course in our art, design and architecture faculties, there's other alternative examination routes such as an exegesis or performing arts, for example. So there are other alternatives to this. Now another thing that we're quite proud of at Monash is we have a progress review. So at a 1 year confirmation, 2 year progress review or final review at 3 years, we have a panel within and also independent assessors and your supervisors. And this is actually a really positive thing for students because it helps to support you along the way to submit and complete your thesis in a timely fashion. And it also reviews your progress and, for example, can comment on what additional professional development skills, additional training that you can require in order to complete your thesis. The professional development is available to all students from all faculties. We have faculty-run professional development as well as university-run professional development programs. And general topics include excellence in research and teaching and professionalism, innovation, and also career. And I think I'd leave it there. I really encourage you to chat and ask questions. And in particular, in the next session, I'll talk more detail about admissions and scholarships, and I'm very much here to help.
Thank you so much for that presentation. As Professor Ricardo said, she will return in session 2 to talk a little bit more about scholarships and funding, so please stick around for that. Up next, we have Dr. Howard Mans. Dr. Howard Mans is a lecturer in linguistics in the School of Languages, Literatures, Cultures and Linguistics. He has written, co-written or co-edited more than 20 articles and 4 books, with much of his work focused on Indonesia. He has supervised many masters and PhD students and coordinated undergraduate and postgraduate linguistics and Indonesian courses at Monash. Before coming to Monash, Howard worked as an English teacher in East Java and as an expert in Iranian languages for the US military. So over to you, Dr. Mans.
Hi, Vicky. My video isn't working right now. Ah, good. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yep, here we go. Beautiful.
Perfect.
Okay. Terima kasih dan saya senang sekali bisa berpresentasi tentang beberapa hal tentang S3 di Monash University. If it's okay, sekarang saya akan nge-share screen dan saya ganti kepada Inggris because we're an international university. Today, I'm going to talk to you about 2 issues and hopefully give you some idea of things that happen behind the scenes. I will talk to you about drafting a research proposal and also about how to approach a research supervisor at Monash University. The first thing that I wanted to point out is that Monash gives you advice about how to put together a proposal, and you can find it at this link right here. It has been put together by our library staff. Oh, sorry, I just want to double check. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay.
Now we can, thank you.
Beautiful, sorry. So there we go. You can access the information on how to write a research proposal at this website right here. But I want to give you some advice today about what to do behind the scenes, how you can perhaps build a strong proposal, some common trends that we come across in Indonesian proposals that some supervisors here in Australia might not understand, but also how you can catch our eye in putting together your proposal and approaching us as supervisors. The first thing to do is to survey the literature. And I mean to present some knowledge about some of the foundational studies in the field, but also some of the more recent theoretical and practical issues that researchers in your field are facing. So to do this, you should critique the literature. And what I mean by critique is show some positive knowledge, but also some of the more critical knowledge about what doesn't work necessarily and what some of the researchers in your field are struggling with. This doesn't mean say bad things about the research as much as show that you are aware that some of the things, some of the research that has been found doesn't quite work or perhaps could be expanded upon. So ultimately, what you want to use the literature review for is to create a niche for your study. I think you should think about it in terms of like a mystery novel. You're trying to create a mystery novel that you yourself are the hero of, and you want to convince a research supervisor that perhaps you are the person that can solve this mystery. So the next thing to do is be sure to set out clear methods and methodologies. And once again, the important thing here is to show that you are aware of some of the methods and methodologies that get used in your particular field. It's not a good idea to send a research proposal that that is just your methods made up off of the top of your head. You want to show that you are aware of some of the ways that other people in your field are grappling with a particular issue in terms of the methods. The next thing that you want to do is set out an achievable timeline. You want to try to convince a potential supervisor that you will be able to solve this issue within the 3 years, and that you have a plan to in fact conduct this research project. Now, remember that we don't expect you to have a perfect proposal. We just want to see that you have the ability and awareness of your field of study, how you write, how you can critique work, but also that you have the ability to plan your thesis. Now, in terms of some common issues that we encounter with some of the research theses that we get from the Indonesian context, it's important to remember that the way that information gets set out in an Indonesian context, or really in any cultural context, can be different than British universities and American universities and Australian universities. Indonesian style is often what is called inductive. This means that you talk about this issue, you talk about that issue, you talk about that issue, and then you hope that the person reading your research work is able to induce what you are trying to say. And in Australia, the structure is quite different. What we want to know in the very beginning is what your stance is, and then we want you to be able to defend that stance. And that is why I present this small graph on the right part of the screen here to give you a sense of what we're looking for. You might think of the introduction, and the conclusion is being about 10% each of your thesis or your proposal. Then you want to have perhaps 3 linear boxes where you support your stance, and then perhaps another box toward the bottom where you show that you are aware of some of the issues that your stance has, or some of the weaknesses of the stance that you're proposing. Another thing to point out is that repetition becomes the inductive style. It's quite common in Indonesian proposals and Indonesian discourse more generally, but it's generally frowned upon in a lot of the Western kind of universities, those British or American or Australian universities. Another issue that we sometimes encounter are people use older references, and we understand at this point, at this side, that sometimes this is an access issue, but we're also looking for people who are go-getters and have some initiative to track down some of the more recent scholarship on, for instance, academia.edu or researchgate.net, or also a lesser known secret about recent research is that you can contact researchers directly and ask for copies of their work frequently. We understand that it's difficult for people in positions such as yourself to get access to research and books because they can be expensive. So don't hesitate to get in contact with researchers to ask them. Another common issue we come across is people pin too much on single references, just one reference, and build their entire proposal based on that reference. And from our perspective, we want to see more references kind of put together and synthesized. And also try to avoid big long sentences, and don't use big words. Small words are better. If you can convey something simply, that is a great skill. And lastly, proofread. It's really important because we're going to be looking for your eye to detail. Now, the last thing I want to briefly talk about here is how to approach a supervisor, what we're looking for at our end, how you can stand out. The first thing is, don't use the same email to approach all supervisors. Don't contact me, for instance, and tell me it's your dream to study at the University of Melbourne, because, well, that's not where I'm at. If you want to study at Monash, you want to show some awareness of the potential researcher and the kinds of issues that they are struggling with as a researcher and how your proposed topic might fit into their research portfolio. If you want to stand out in my very busy email queue, the best way to do it is to show that you've gone that extra step to learn about the work that I'm doing and how your proposal might match up with that work. Now, that said, we're busy, so don't be afraid to send us a follow-up email if you don't hear from us in a week. You might have gotten lost in our email queue, and please don't hesitate to follow up with us. Lastly, remember, you're checking us out. This relationship. It's not just about you trying to find a supervisor, but it's about you finding a supervisor who works. Now, even if we feel positively about you, the first thing that I do is I will ask you a question or two via email to see how you respond. I want to see if you're the kind of person that can take feedback and also what you do with that feedback. And the next step along those same lines is that we'll have a follow-up Zoom meeting with you or a phone meeting with you to talk through your proposal. And once again, I can't highlight this enough, the supervisory relationship is a relationship. And remember that you're checking us out too. You're going to spend 3 to 4 years with us, so make sure that you find the right person. So from my perspective, Sudha, but I'm very happy to answer any questions at the end in the question period. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Mans. Really interesting tips there on how to approach a supervisor, and I love the idea of it being a puzzle and also the ways that our styles are different depending on our cultures. So thank you so much. Howard will be back in session 3, so please stick around for that. Before I introduce the next speaker, I'll just remind everybody that questions and answers will be at the end of each session. So what we'll get you to do is just post your questions in the little Q&A box, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. We'll also give people the opportunity to raise their hand at the end of the session if they want to ask a question directly to a panelist. We can probably only take 1 or 2 of those, but I'll ask you to wait to raise your hand until we finish with all 3 speakers. And I'll just let you know as well that everything is being recorded. So next up, our final speaker for this session is Dr. Sylvia Yazid. Sylvia has been a lecturer and a researcher at the International Relations Department of Parahyangan Catholic University, Bandung since 2004. She is also currently the head of the Office for International Affairs and Cooperation at the university. Her Bachelor of International Relations is from the Parahyangan Catholic University, and her Master in Public Policy and Management and her PhD in Political and Social Inquiry are from Monash University. She has published on issues such as migration, democratization, and human rights. Thank you, Dr. Yazid. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. Let me just share the screen. Yeah. Okay, hi everyone, nice to meet you, and let me just start with saying thank you to Monash for inviting me to share again. It's always a pleasure, and it's always my mission to pay forward whatever I have received. So here we go. So I think I'm going to share what I did based on what Howard share at previously. So this was my road to candidature, what I experienced when I tried to start my candidature in Monash. So round 1, know why you want to pursue a graduate study. So graduate study might not be for everyone. So for me, it was for my career because I am a lecturer. And I think you all know that as a lecturer, we need to pursue further study, and PhD is the ultimate requirement. So it is a must for me. For some, it might not. If you are working in a private institution, not really an educational institution, it might not be the best choice to pursue your PhD. But given what Sharon said about how Monash is now try to ensure your employability. So maybe what I experience is a little bit different from what is happening now. And also family. Are you going with your family? Because it really needs to be considered when you choose where to study, in what city, because for me it is important, and based on my experience, Melbourne is just wonderful. So that's why I choose to go back to Melbourne and Monash. Round 2, build your reputation academically and professionally. I think some of you might have heard the rumor saying that if you want to apply for a graduate study, for a doctoral or a PhD study, you need to have a record of doing research. That's not a rumor. I think that's true. Academically, I try to ensure that my master program had an element of research in it. So I chose for coursework and research. So when I apply, I can claim that I have experience in doing research. But it might not be the same for you. So then you need to build your reputation in doing research professionally. So you need to be able to show that in your line of work, in your career, you have done a degree of research activities. And then round 3, you have to do a research before you apply. University, supervisor, or city. So I'll tell you a little story that when I applied for my PhD, honestly speaking, I didn't apply only to Monash. So where do I start? With the university or with the supervisor? I have to say everything. I researched in all the universities in Australia, looking for somebody who might suit my need. And I also have to say that I got two acceptance from 2 supervisors, from Monash and also from ANU. Then I consulted with my senior, where should I go, ANU or Monash? Indonesians, honestly speaking, Indonesians might say ANU because of the reputation. But then my senior my colleague in the university said that at this stage, you are not looking for university. You are looking for supervisor that match your research. So it is important for you to consider that the supervisor you are looking for will be suitable for you. Just like what Howard said, you are also checking out the supervisor. Do you think you will match with the supervisor? And then, of course, for me, it's the city. Melbourne is just wonderful. You can do a lot of things in Melbourne. If you want to know my experience, I'll be back in the 3rd session later. So we'll talk about it later. Area of interest. This is really important because you need to be able to talk to your supervisor at the same page. So the area of interest that you are going to look at should be similar or at least close to what your supervisor has been doing his or her work in. I saw some questions in the chat or Q&A box. How do I look for supervisors? Just go into the websites. Look at the profile of the supervisors and see how they have been building their research profile. I think there are informations about their publications, their supervising record, and things like that. Use that as your reference. Potential topics. You need to be ready with your potential topics and look for funding. I think the 2nd session we'll talk about funding. And the other thing is, I just noticed from Vicky's email that there is a quote from John Monash at the bottom of your email, Vicky. Equip yourself for life, not solely for your own benefit, but for the benefit of the whole community. I think that also that's also why I feel comfortable in Monash, because in my university, that is also the mission, to learn something and to give back to the community. So unconsciously, that match is there with my between Monash and my own career. Okay, round 3, approaching potential supervisors. So I didn't know who to approach. Honestly, I didn't know who to approach. So I randomly searched for potential supervisors based on their profile in the web, in the university web. But I'll show you the email that I sent to my supervisor. The initial, this is the first email that I sent to her. So I divided this email into some sections. So you can see from here that the first paragraph is really about selling myself and referring to my previous study. So I'm a lecturer. I have a master's degree from public policy and management in Monash, and my minor thesis was on, so basically selling myself. And you can notice that I didn't ask her to be my supervisor at the beginning of my email. What I said was, I would like to come back to Monash, blah, 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 praising how Monash is really a comfortable place for me to study, and I would like to come back, and also personal touch. Like this one, at our department, there is an increase of interest towards gender issues. So showing that going to Monash, pursuing my PhD with this topic will really benefit me. And it will really develop me as a scholar. And then I suggested the potential topics for my thesis. You can see from here, there are 3 topics that I propose, but all the topics have what we call in Indonesian benang merah. So I was really into gender studies, women issues, women migrant labor. So there's a connection between these 3 topics. And then, as you can see at the last paragraph, I still didn't ask her to be my supervisor. I realized that I still need to do lots of research, blah, 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 but I would like to get your opinion on the above topics. And I also said that I'm applying for AusAid scholarship. It was called AusAid scholarship that time. It was not AAI or AAS. So I'm still asking for the opinion. This was the reply. Thank you for your inquiry. I think all the topics you mentioned are very good ones, which I would be happy to supervise. For us applying for PhD, this is a blessing. Sujud syukur after this. So I happen to be lucky to find her. But to tell you the truth, to get to Susan, I applied to, I sent emails to many other scholars, and some got replied and rejected, but some didn't get any reply at all. Okay, the next part, ask questions. So there were questions in the Q&A box again about what will be the steps and blah, blah, blah. I asked that in the second email. When I thanked her for agreeing to supervise me, I also asked other questions. As you can see, in the third paragraph, my question was, another question is, if I choose one of the topics with you as the supervisor, which department or faculty will I belong to? I asked this question, I gathered the courage to ask this question because it is important in Indonesia to be in line, to have an inline study with your place of work. So I had to make sure that when I come back from my PhD study, I will go back to International Relations Department in my university, then my department in Monash will be considered as in line by the Indonesian government. So I asked this, I made sure that the department will be in line with my own department. Yes, that was my process. And I'm happy to answer any question. Thank you very much, and good luck to all of you. Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. We're so lucky to get your perspective because you've seen it from the other side. So thank you so much.
Sure.
It's time for questions and answers, but before we do, I will just let everybody know that we are recording and we will make the slides and the recording available to all the participants. So I know a lot of people are interested to know that. So what we might do first is just give people the opportunity to raise their hand if they'd like to ask a live question directly to a panelist, and I can unmute you. Is there anybody who would like to ask a question? Yeah, I can see a couple of people. I'll just unmute you and you can direct your question to the panelist. So Ima Frafika. You might just need to unmute yourself on your end as well, perhaps. Maybe I can do that. Hello, Ima. Hello. We might come back to you, Ima. I can see somebody else has raised their hand. How about Sri Apriyanti? Oh, we can hear you now, Ima.
Hey, hello.
Hi, would you like to direct your question towards...
Okay, can you hear my voice? Sorry, I have
Yes,
this problem here. Thank you.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, the words, my name is Ima Frafika Sari. I'm from Indonesia. That I'm so really grateful I can join this meeting, I think, because this is very important for me. Actually, I want to be study in next PhD. And many season that I got many knowledge from the about the Monash University, and then the process how can I get or apply, and then the journey and many other. Then here I want to ask about how I can get scholarship in Monash University. Actually, I'm as a lecturer here in English education, but in university it's a stage, it's a government. So if there is about the scholarship, I need many invitation, I think. So it is many rules. So how I got many scholarship, how I can get scholarship in Monash University as my position as a lecturer English and University of State. Thank you.
Sure. So perhaps Sharon, maybe a quick word on scholarships. I know you're going to cover that in more detail in session 2, but is there anything you can say just now?
Yeah, so
Yes.
we'll go through scholarships. I'll give you a website too. So at Monash, through
Yes.
the Australian government, we do support scholarships that cover the living allowance, and they're quite competitive, but also the international allowance. And then individuals, I think you said education, didn't you? So the Faculty of Education also have scholarships to support you as well, if you know, depending on the strategic area that you would apply. So we have, yeah, I'll give you the website. The next round closes August 31st. That you can apply through an online system at Monash. And there's also a number of Indonesian scholarships that you can apply for as well. And so I've got a slide outlining those as well.
Great, thank you so much for that. We're going to go to the written Q&As now. So I'm just going to read a few out. Bear with me just a moment. So perhaps this one for Howard from Fazer. I want to ask about references. How many references are recommended for the proposal?
That's a good question. Cukup, yang cukup, yeah. Which is, yeah, ultimately, it will depend on your topic. I think it will depend on your field. But rather than number of references, I think sometimes it's a matter of quality rather than quantity. And to go back to a point that I made on my slides, you want to show some awareness of the foundational works in your field, but also you want to show some awareness of the more recent works in your field that bring up the kinds of issues that you might want to explore in your thesis. And I was very I was very impressed with what Bu Sylvia set out in her initial email, because I think that kind of approach, that kind of email approach, is even more important, or at least equally important, to the proposal itself. The way that Bu Sylvia approached Bu Susan, for me as a supervisor, it would have been impossible not to respond to that email. I get a lot of emails where people don't put that kind of effort into the email. And even if Bu Sylvia's topic was not remotely related to what I do, I would have felt obliged to respond and point her to somebody who did that kind of work. So go back to your original question, how many references is enough? It's a difficult question to answer. I would say at least 10, 15, but even then it's quality that matters more than quantity.
Thank you, Howard. This one could be for anybody really. From Rena Iliana, should we have some recognised publications before we apply for doctoral study at Monash University and before we approach our potential supervisor?
Maybe Vicky, do you want me to talk about that one too?
Fantastic, thank you.
So in the next session as well, I do go into more specifics about what the admission requirements are. You don't necessarily need publications for admission. We have what's called an auto H1E equivalent, so an H1, and it's an automatic, you are equivalent for admission if you have a master's, for example, where you've done well in your thesis component, then that is all you really need. However, on saying that, if you do want a scholarship, and in particular an international scholarship, then any sort of publication, particularly first author publications, in journals that are, highly cited or have impact in your field, then that would add to your competitiveness for a scholarship. So in summary, you don't need them to actually get into a PhD, but if you are applying for an international scholarship, then they would help you to be more competitive.
Great, thank you, Sharon. A question for Sylvia from Kristen. Is it okay to just mention some topics when you are talking to a potential supervisor without a proposal?
So just in the email, mentioning some topics. To tell you the truth, my email went to Susan with only a one-page description of my topic. And after that, then Susan asked me to write a proposal based on Monash format. So I did two stages of writing the proposal. So the first stage with the email was only like trying to get her attention. And after that, after she said yes, then she asked me to enter the official process of Monash. So I do believe that first you need to get contact with the supervisor. And I have to let you know that my experience, I was competing in the scholarship. I was competing with somebody who already have a supervisor waiting for her to come to Australia, her former supervisor in her master program. But she didn't get the scholarship, and I didn't know anybody to supervise my PhD. But I did mention my former supervisor. So I guess it's like in Indonesian we say it's like building a relationship. It's like you are going to be with your supervisor for at least 3 or 4 years. So you need to be able to connect with your supervisor from the very beginning. So that's what I can say. So if it's an early stage, I think that's okay. If that person is not interested immediately, maybe he's not destined for you.
Thanks, Sylvia. Thank you. A question maybe for Sharon again from Fadila. Fadila says that in the current situation with the COVID-19 pandemic, is it still possible to apply to study at Monash University and to get a letter of offer? Because some of the other universities that this person has had experience with is sort of indicating that perhaps after the pandemic is over?
Yeah. So good, really good question. We're very much encouraging you to still apply for admission. And so we currently still have a number of international students that we are approving for admission to PhDs. We're still offering scholarships as well. The only difference is that our numbers of deferrals have increased. So you can secure your position with a scholarship or to secure it with an admission. And then depending on the COVID situation, then the best way to proceed is to defer, or you may have a visa deferral as well. The Australian universities are speaking with our government, really trying to work out how we can, get international students to start at our universities, because you're such a crucial part of our university environment. So yes, very much go ahead and admit for a PhD, and scholarships are business as usual.
That's very positive, thank you. So this question, perhaps for Howie, is about standing out in the interview process. What can participants do to stand out?
In the interview, what normally happens is we follow up on a couple of the points from my email interaction with you. This is my process. It wouldn't be the process necessarily that everybody uses, but I will follow up and I will ask you clarification questions about your thesis. I might ask you another question about your methods. I might ask you whether you're aware of a particular perspective. But a lot of that is just, to be honest, it's pura, just to see if how you'll respond. I want to see, just generally, do we have the kind of interaction that would put together a good research relationship over the next couple of years? So honestly, the best way to stand out in the interview process is probably just to be open-minded and be flexible, and to demonstrate that if someone gives you feedback, that you take note of that feedback, and that you don't have to have the right answers. What you need to be able to show is that you can respond or admit that you don't know, and that you'll follow up on that point. I don't know what people are asking me a lot of the time, but the important thing is just to show that you're aware that something can be expanded upon, and that you yourself are somebody who is flexible and open-minded. Terbuka, just about the world, and that by being terbuka, you're exactly the kind of person that I want. Terbuka and hardworking, ultimately, I think, are two of the best qualities to make for a good PhD student.
Thank you. Can I put you on the spot and direct another question towards you, Howie? We have Farah Dewey, who said, "Dear Dr. Mans, I appreciate your input about the difference between Indonesian style of writing and how we should tackle that. My question is how to find, design, or plan the novelty factor."
Oh, the novelty factor. Yeah, I mean, to me, in my field, and speaking for the humanities, I wouldn't speak across all fields, but the useful thing to do, I think, is establish, firstly, has something been explored in other contexts, but not your context? So if you're thinking about language teaching, for instance, and the way that language teaching has been investigated often in Europe, often in English-speaking contexts, you might ask a question around, well, why hasn't been explored in Indonesian-speaking contexts? That's one way that you might build on it, by moving it into a different context where it hasn't existed before. And that can be quite exciting, because a lot of the research in the humanities has been driven by Europe for a very long time, and the Global South is growing in its contribution to this field, to English literature. The second way is to show that you're aware of a theoretical or a methodological concept, and that it is developed up to a point, but you want to take it just a little bit past that point. You don't want to change the world or propose that you're going to change the world, because that scares us. But if you can show that you're planning, you know enough about a topic that you can take it just a tiny bit further, to us, that's really, really appealing. Once again, it's important not to overshoot the mark. We're probably more drawn to a careful thesis, a careful proposal that might turn out to be amazing, rather than a thesis that proposes that it will be amazing and overshoots and kind of proposes, yeah, you know, que le bien. We don't want that. We want something that's a little more focused.
Thank you. Some great practical tips there. Sharon, does Monash welcome transfers from other PhD programs?
Yes, so we certainly do that. So you can transfer from your PhD, and some of the considerations with that is, will you be continuing in the topic of study, and therefore you might have some of the candidature time reduced, if you get what I mean. Or it might, if it's a different project, then you'd have the full up to 4 years to complete. And we'd probably also look at any indicators of progress in your you know, PhD that you have transferred from. So yeah, certainly we can accept transfers from other PhDs.
Great, thank you. And there was a question that has just disappeared from underneath my mouse, but I think I can remember it again for you, Sharon. Is there a way for students to get into the PhD program without having the masters? So is there a pathway from undergraduate?
Yep, so certainly also if you have a bachelor's, it might be a 4 years bachelor's, but there we will be looking for if there's a research component embedded in the bachelor's. So most often we have master's students who have a thesis, but if you have like a 4 years bachelor's that has a research component, then that's also a pathway.
Thank you. Sylvia, one for you, if I may. When we send our emails to our potential supervisor, should we attach, oh, it disappeared. Should we attach letters of reference? It's testing my memory.
I didn't. I attached the letter of reference, if I remember well, when I applied through the formal channel in Monash, because I think that's required. I might be wrong, but Sharon, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the reference will be needed for the formal application. Can I just take this opportunity to say that what Howard said about being flexible, about being open-minded is really important, because I have to say that all the 3 topics that I proposed was scrapped the first meeting with my supervisor in Australia. So it changed, totally changed. I didn't end up researching on that. So being flexible, being open-minded and listening is really important. Thank you, Vicky.
Wisdom there, thank you. So very last question I think we have time for, and this one is whether there is a specific template for a proposal that applicants can use. Sorry, maybe I should direct that towards Sharon.
Yep, so within the online system, there's a word limit, but I can't actually remember what it is. There's not a long proposal. It wouldn't be more than a page. There's no template for that. But of course, you as a student should talk to your supervisor as much as like what Howard's been talking about in designing that proposal. We are very aware that that proposal may change, you know, also if there's deferrals due to when you can actually start at the university. So it is a general proposal that's agreed upon by the student and the supervisor. So yeah, no actual template, but there is a word limit within the, I think it's up to about 1 page.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our panelists, Professor Ricardo, Dr. Yazid and Dr. Mans. It's been a fantastic first session. We have lots more questions in the Q&A box. A lot of them are about financials and scholarships. So I'm just going to ask you to hang on to those questions, because in session 2, we're going to look at that more specifically. So please stick around for session 2. We'll have a short break now. But before we do break, I'm going to put some polls up on the screen, and we really like the participants to answer those polls. And yeah, like I said, please stick around for for session 2, where we'll be covering funding your PhD. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Vicky. See you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Joe DiPasquale, and we're here on now the second session on the Monash Indonesia Talks PhD seminar series. So this is probably one of the most critical sessions you can have, how to fund your PhD. So just a quick welcome to anyone new joining our presentation. Just a bit of housekeeping. Can you leave your questions for the end? Also, please, we'll put everyone on mute, but do raise your hands if you have any specific questions. And also, this presentation is being recorded, so we'll make that available to all the participants at a later date, and we'll hope to share the presentations as well from all the presenters. So firstly, I'd like to introduce a colleague from the Australia Awards Program in Indonesia, Rianti Issa Fika Sari. Apologise if I've said that wrong. Also known as Fika. Fika works for the Australia Awards Program in Indonesia. She's the Communications and Promotions Coordinator for the program. And apart from her full-time work at Australia Awards Indonesia, she also is a volunteer for the CAUSIND, C-A-U-S-I-N-D program, which is a conference of Australian and Indonesian youth, which is a bilateral organisation which aims to create stronger relations between Australia and Indonesia, and her role is as the Chief Communications Officer. So, Rian, Fika, I'll just get you to open up your presentation.
Ya.
Hi.
Ya, hai, Pak Joe, terima kasih.
Unmute. Unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can't hear her. We can't hear you.
Already unmute there.
She's on.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Oh, the audience can hear me, they said.
They can hear her.
Okay.
Okay. So should I start? Okay.
All right. So Fika, just continue with your presentation. We can't hear you, but I think the participants can. So please go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Pak Joe. All right, so my name is Fika. I'm from Australia Awards in Indonesia. But for this presentation, I think I'm just going to present in Bahasa Indonesia, or maybe just a mix of it. So let's just start. And I'm going to make it quick, so we can discuss more later during the Q&A session. Okay. So, okay. Start. Saya akan mulai dengan alasan dan peluang belajar di Australia. Singkat saja, Australia merupakan salah satu negara nomor 1 dengan tujuan utama dari pelajar di Indonesia. Karena secara geografis, lokasinya sangat dekat dengan Indonesia dan sudah banyak sekali pengalaman dari warga Indonesia yang belajar di Australia. Kemudian ada 91,1% pelajar di Indonesia puas dengan kualitas pembelajaran dan hidup di Australia. Dan ada lebih dari 22.000 bidang studi yang ditawarkan. Juga ada 7 dari 100 universitas terbaik di dunia itu ada di Australia. Salah satunya Monash University. Dan 7 dari 100 kota pelajar terbaik di dunia ada di Australia. Salah satunya adalah kota Melbourne. Peluang pendidikan belajar dari pemerintah Indonesia. Tiga ini adalah contoh beasiswa yang ditawarkan oleh pemerintah Indonesia atau dibiayai oleh pemerintah Indonesia yang bisa memungkinkan teman-teman untuk belajar di Australia. Ada LPDP, ada beasiswa dari Kemristek Dikti, dan 5.000 doktor dari Kementerian Agama. Untuk detail lebih lanjutnya bisa dicek ke website masing-masing. Dan ini adalah peluang beasiswa dari pemerintah Australia. Ada Australia Awards dan ada ACIA untuk agricultural scholarship yang berhubungan dengan research. Tapi hari ini saya akan lebih fokus ke Australia Awards scholarships. Kami sebut long-term awards ini untuk postgraduate scholarships, yaitu untuk S2 dan S3. Sekilas tentang Australia Awards di Indonesia. Program beasiswa ini salah satu yang terlama untuk program beasiswa internasional, dan kami menyediakan beasiswa postgraduate untuk S2 dan S3, dan ada juga short course, tapi hari ini saya akan fokus lebih ke postgraduate scholarships, dan tentunya tujuannya adalah untuk meningkatkan sumber daya manusia dan hubungan bilateral antara Australia dan Indonesia. Dan ini ada beberapa poin penting yang teman-teman harus ketahui. Beasiswa Australia Awards tidak memiliki batasan usia bagi pendaftar, jadi siapapun boleh mendaftar. Dan tidak ada batasan frekuensi. Jadi misalnya teman-teman belum berhasil, tapi ingin mencoba terus, tidak ada batasannya, jadi boleh terus mencoba. Dan kami menyediakan hingga 250 beasiswa pasca sarjana untuk periode penerimaan aplikasi tahun ini, yang untuk intake tahun depan. Dan ini terbuka untuk umum, namun kami mendorong pelamar perempuan, penyandang disabilitas atau kelompok difabel, dan pelamar dari Geographic Focus Areas atau GFA, yang terdiri dari 7 kota, yaitu Maluku, 7 wilayah, Maluku, Maluku Utara, Papua, Papua Barat, NTB, NTT, dan Aceh. Ini adalah 3 bidang besar yang diprioritaskan oleh Australia Awards. Ada berkaitan dengan institusi ekonomi dan infrastruktur yang efektif, ada masyarakat yang inklusif melalui tata kelola pemerintahan yang efektif, dan pembangunan manusia untuk masyarakat yang produktif dan sehat. Contoh-contohnya ada di sini. Jadi untuk yang pertama, teman-teman bisa lihat ya, di sini ada air dan sanitasi, pertambangan, ada juga perdagangan, kehutanan, dan juga keamanan cyber atau cyber security. Ini contoh saja. Teman-teman nanti bisa cek lagi lebih detail di website Australia Awards di subpage Priority Fields of Study untuk lebih detailnya. Dan ini adalah beberapa contoh untuk bidang besar yang kedua, yaitu tentang pembangunan manusia untuk masyarakat yang produktif dan sehat. Di sini contohnya ada kesehatan masyarakat, pendidikan dan pelatihan, ada juga tentang ilmu pembangunan, ilmu internasional, dan contoh yang lainnya. Dan ini yang ketiga, untuk bagian masyarakat yang inklusif melalui tata kelola pemerintahan yang efektif. Ada tentang undang-undang hukum dan judisial, ada ilmu politik, resolusi konflik, anti korupsi, dan lain-lain. Tapi pada dasarnya teman-teman harus ketahui di sini, contoh-contoh ini tidak harus secara spesifik ya, jadi tidak berarti teman-teman harus plek-plek judulnya sama. Yang penting intinya sama, tidak masalah, dan kalaupun bidang studi yang teman-teman inginkan tidak tertera di sini, teman-teman juga bisa kaitkan, dan kita bisa bahas lebih lanjut nanti. Oke. Ini adalah manfaat beasiswa sebelum keberangkatan. Jadi, di sini ada pelatihan beasiswa, pelatihan bahasa Inggris sebelum berangkat dengan beasiswa ya, kami sebutnya dengan EAP, lalu ada biaya visa, pemeriksaan medis, ronsen, dan asuransi kesehatan, ada biaya perjalanan domestik dari tempat asal teman-teman ke lokasi EAP, kemudian ada konsultasi langsung dengan perwakilan Universitas Australia, ada pendampingan saat proses aplikasi, dan dukungan pengurusan visa keluarga ke Australia. Ini paling banyak yang menanyakan ya. Jadi, banyak sekali yang bertanya, terutama untuk pelamar PhD, apakah boleh membawa keluarga? Jawabannya boleh, tapi Australia Awards hanya membiayai penerima beasiswanya saja. Jadi, untuk keluarga, baik itu pasangan dan anak, tidak dibiayai biaya hidupnya, namun Australia Awards membantu dengan dukungan biaya visa. Dan biaya visa tersebut bisa digunakan oleh pasangan dari penerima beasiswa untuk bekerja secara full-time di Australia, yaitu selama 40 jam per minggu. Sedangkan penerima beasiswanya sendiri hanya boleh bekerja secara part-time atau 20 jam setiap minggunya. Oke, kita lanjut. Ini adalah manfaat beasiswa saat di Australia. Tentunya ada biaya perjalanan domestik dari Indonesia ke Australia, pulang pergi. Ada juga biaya pengenalan untuk program akademik ya. Jadi teman-teman di sana nanti akan dipersiapkan ketika datang pertama kali, dan juga biaya establishment yang sekali diberikan, biaya hidup selama di Australia yang diberikan setiap 2 minggu, lalu ada biaya tutorial, dan penelitian lapangan di Australia maupun di Indonesia, jadi tergantung research-nya masing-masing. Lalu ada juga pendampingan dari pihak universitas selama masa studi atau dedicated LO, dan biaya perjalanan reuni atau kami sebut dengan reunion airfare. Jadi teman-teman misalnya yang program S3 ini, setelah setengah masa studi, S3 itu kan maksimal 4 tahun yang kami biayai, jadi setelah 2 tahun masa studi, teman-teman bisa pulang kembali ke Indonesia, dibiayai, dan kembali ke Australia. Dan ini adalah manfaat beasiswa setelah kembali dari Australia. Jadi, teman-teman bisa bergabung dengan network Australia Global Alumni yang sudah sangat luas, juga bergabung dengan alumni forum kami di LinkedIn, dan juga bisa mengikuti berbagai kegiatan alumni. Nanti kita bisa diskusi juga lebih lanjut dalam Q&A jika ada pertanyaan. Dan ini adalah poin-poin pentingnya ya. Pembukaannya saat ini kami masih tetap sama setiap tahunnya, yaitu 1 Februari, dan tahun depan menjadi 2021, penutupannya 30 April. Selama ini masih sama, jadi teman-teman inilah informasi yang saat ini kami berikan, namun apabila ada perubahan, kami akan beritahukan lebih lanjut lagi. Dan jangan lupa untuk mengisi 2 portal ini penting. Jadi jangan hanya salah satu, OASIS harus diisi, dan additional information di website Australia Awards Indonesia juga harus diisi. Karena banyak sekali yang tidak mengisi keduanya, dan itu otomatis gugur. Ini adalah persyaratan untuk non-GFA, atau dari wilayah umum, di luar 7 wilayah yang saya sebutkan tadi. Memilih bidang studi yang termasuk bidang prioritas, kemudian IPK minimalnya 2,9, dan kemampuan bahasa Inggris untuk PhD, ITP-nya minimal 550, IELTS 6, TOEFL IBT 79, dan PTE akademik 64. Untuk mengetahui teman-teman berasal dari wilayah GFA atau tidak, persyaratannya harus dilihat dari KTP. Lalu ini untuk persyaratan pendaftaran teman-teman yang berasal dari KTP 7 wilayah tadi, dan juga pelamar tabel. Sedikit lebih rendah dari standar yang sebelumnya, yaitu untuk master lebih rendah, tapi untuk PhD sama ya, jadi ITP 550, IELTS 6,0, IBT 79, dan PTE 54. IPK-nya sedikit lebih rendah menjadi 2,75. Ada persyaratan tambahan untuk pelamar PhD. Jadi, teman-teman di sini harus melampirkan transkrip ijazah S1 dan S2 yang telah dilegalisir. Jangan lupa harus dilegalisir. Boleh di kampus asal, boleh juga di notaris jika tidak memungkinkan ke kampus asal, misalnya kampusnya jauh atau kondisi lain, sehingga bisa menunjuk ke notaris terdekat. Ada referensi akademis dari pembimbing S2, sebaiknya memang dari pembimbing S2 yang mengenal betul pengalaman akademis teman-teman ketika S2. Dan juga proposal penelitian di formulir aplikasi yang nanti akan dimasukkan ke dalam portal. Di situ terdiri dari course details, research title, research objective, proposed research methodology, dan field work. Proposal penelitian ini cukup satu
PhD
saja. Jadi hanya abstraknya saja ya, jadi tidak perlu panjang sekali. Dan yang paling penting ini, memiliki potential supervisor pada universitas tujuan. Bukti korespondensinya teman-teman nanti lampirkan di aplikasi. Jadi Sederhana saja sebenarnya sih bukti korespondensinya. Misalnya teman-teman capture atau ambil screenshot dari percakapan, misalnya di email, dan cara approach-nya teman-teman bisa mengacu kepada penjelasan di sesi sebelum ini ya, dari Ibu Sylvia dan juga Pak Howard tentang bagaimana approaching potential supervisor. Jadi, itu tadi yang paling penting, tambahan persyaratan untuk pelamar S3, dan ini adalah persyaratan dokumen yang teman-teman harus lengkapi. Singkatnya adalah SICCAT, sertifikat asli hasil baik TOEFL maupun IELTS maupun PTE, pilih salah satu, ijazah yang dilegalisir, CV terbaru dalam bahasa Inggris maksimal 2 halaman saja, tidak perlu panjang-panjang, KTP atau paspor, halaman identitas yang paling penting, dan ini juga salah satu saja, akte kelahiran yang difotokopi, dan transkrip yang juga dilegalisir, sama ya seperti ijazah. Jadi kalau teman-teman tidak punya yang dilegalisir, kalau bisa ke kampusnya silakan, tapi kalau tidak harus ke notaris. Gitu ya. Jadi ini contoh score report dari TOEFL, ini contoh saja. Dan ini adalah detail tahapannya ya. Jadi teman-teman pertama itu kan apply di 2 portalnya, jangan lupa Oasis dan additional information di online application yang ada di website Australia Awards. Kemudian deadline-nya 30 April. Setelah itu teman-teman bisa menunggu pengumuman hasil seleksi, dan tahapan yang pertama itu akan diumumkan pada maksimal Juni 2021. Setelah itu teman-teman akan diberitahu tentang tanggal dan lokasi interview dan tes IELTS. Jadi tes IELTS ini adalah tes IELTS yang kami biayai. Jadi ini tujuannya sebagai placement test, semacam placement test, sehingga kami mengetahui tingkat kemampuan bahasa Inggris teman-teman, dan dari situlah menentukan berapa lama teman-teman butuh mengikuti EAP atau persiapan training bahasa Inggris. Setelah itu, teman-teman mengikuti interview dan tes IELTS-nya pada bulan Juli, dan menunggu hasil seleksi yang akan diumumkan pada akhir Agustus 2021 sebelum teman-teman berangkat. Ini adalah kontak, mungkin teman-teman bisa catat nomor telepon kami, tapi saat ini kondisi kami masih work from home, jadi mungkin bisa email dan bisa juga baca lebih detailnya. Sebenarnya banyak informasi yang lebih detail di website Australia Awards. Dan ada poin pentingnya, mungkin teman-teman banyak yang belum mengetahui ya. Jadi untuk beasiswa Australia Awards itu kami yang paling penting adalah beasiswanya dulu, fokus ke beasiswanya dulu. Jadi kalau teman-teman sudah memiliki contoh atau pilihan beberapa universitas dan potential supervisor itu bagus, tapi tidak perlu mendaftar langsung ke kampusnya. Jadi yang paling penting adalah fokus ke beasiswanya dulu. Ketika teman-teman sudah benar-benar lolos beasiswanya, tim Australia Awards yang akan membantu teman-teman untuk apply ke kampus pilihan. Dan ketika salah satu persyaratan tadi, yang potential supervisor, yang paling penting bagi kami adalah ada feedback dari potential supervisor tersebut, ada komunikasi, terutama membahas tentang research proposal yang teman-teman sudah buat, atau paling tidak topiknya dulu. Tapi research proposalnya kami butuhkan untuk aplikasi beasiswa Australia Awards sendiri. Itu dulu, sehingga kita bisa diskusi lebih lanjut di bagian Q&A nanti. Terima kasih. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Fika. That was a very useful presentation. And I just might add that Monash has welcomed many Australia Award students over the last 20 to 30 years. So very popular scholarship program, and Monash has always been a very popular choice. So for those who weren't in our previous session, I'll just introduce Professor Sharon Ricardo. Professor Sharon Ricardo is the Academic Director for the Monash Graduate Research Office, and she will talk about the Monash Scholarship Program, scholarships available to international graduate research students, and she will have 3 themes: scholarship opportunities, stipends, and application dates. And over to you, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I'll share my slides here. So now we'll go through the admissions and scholarships available at Monash. So we do support you as Indonesian students, as well as there's external funds. So there are a number of funds also available for Indonesian students. And if we can distribute the PDF of these files also, and these are hyperlinked, so you can click on these individually. So these include Indonesian Women in STEM Scholarship, an Indonesian Endowment Fund, the Australia Awards, as we've also been discussing, a scholarship from the Ministry of Religious Affairs, as well as other scholarships available. So you can go through these. Now, as far as scholarships available from Monash, we have two that can be awarded. One is the Monash Graduate Scholarship. So this provides money, living allowance for up to 3.5 years. We also have a Monash International Tuition Scholarship, which covers your international fees, and that's available for up to 4 years. Now, this is the website here that you can use to access all of this information. It's quite a user-friendly website. It'll go through what's required and in a step-by-step process. Now we have two admission dates for international scholarships. The next one closes on August the 31st. So we have two at March and August every year. This is an online system. And there's two types of application. You can apply for admission to a PhD and also go into the mix to apply for a scholarship. So this is both the two scholarships, the living allowance and also the international stipend. Or you can also use this online system to apply for admission only, and you can do this anytime throughout the year. So what are entry requirements? And I've talked about that in the previous session, but just to go through these again, you can enter into a PhD with a bachelor's. This is normally 4 years full-time in a relevant field to your PhD. It must have some sort of research component. This could be a project, if not a thesis, or if individual units are research relevant, this can also go in to add up to that research requirement, which is normally about 25% of the course. So it's normally a 1 year of a 4 years bachelor's degree. Many students also have a master's degree with a significant research component, so usually a thesis. So this is normally about 25% of the 1 year full time. And we have here all equivalent qualifications. What might this entail? This could be publications resulting from a bachelor's. It could be publications from research experience, such as a research assistant, or if you're working in industry, any sort of professional experience can also add to your research experience that can be considered for your PhD. We also do have English language requirements. It's really important when considering this, what is the language of instruction of your university for your bachelor's or master's. So if it's an English speaking university, this certainly goes a long way to meeting English requirements. You can always sit an English language test, such as a TOEFL or IELTS, or if you don't meet English language requirements through language of instruction or any sort of professional experience, such as working at an industry that is also spoken in English, might add towards this. But if not, and if you don't have an English language test, you can always admit to the PhD and come to Australia and enter what's called a Monash English Bridging Program. And when you pass, this is taught at Monash University on the Clayton campus. And when you actually pass this, then you meet the entry requirements for English into the university. So how to apply? In the previous website, you can check your eligibility for entry, such as your academic qualifications. For that automatic AH1E equivalence that I was talking about, your GPA average must be about 3.5 out of 4. or normally, or you may have additional evidence such as your professional experience or research publications. Check your eligibility for English language proficiency and other criteria. So all of this is on the website. Now, you do need an invitation to apply, and Howard has talked about how to approach supervisors, for example. On the website also, there's what's called an expression of interest, and this is basically to make sure that you do have a project available at Monash. And so it's simply your name, the project, the supervisor, and that you have been approved, and this is all added onto the online system. And of course, there's a Find a Supervisor link on the Monash website as well, so you can look through different projects available in your field, and as I mentioned, then complete an expression of interest form that's uploaded in your application. But first off, try to look for supervisors, approach your supervisors as we've spoken about today, email them. And once you find that supervisor, they can help you also and that faculty with getting these relevant forms that you'll need for admission. So don't worry about that too much at this stage. Prepare your documents. You can get your academic transcript, so you can be doing that now. And then with your supervisor, you will think about a research proposal that's feasible within that up to 4-year time frame, and submit your application. So as I mentioned, admission only PhD applications are accepted all year round, and we are accepting them now, irrespective of the COVID situation. So we're going ahead. Admission with scholarship applications, the next one closes the 31st of August. And so noting the processing of the applications takes about 6 weeks after submission of the closing date, and we have the selection committee, and then you'll learn of the outcomes. And just a testimony from some of our graduates, as I mentioned before, Monash is a very outward, international looking university. We really welcome students of all cultures here at Monash in Australia. One of our recent graduates from Indonesia now works for the United Nations, providing advice on international legal protection of ethnic and religious minorities. He did a PhD in the Faculty of Law here. And so, through the Monash Doctoral Program and all that professional development training, and also, we do have very quality supervisors that will be supporting you throughout these studies in order to provide you skills that you'll need whatever research career that you go into. And so, please contact us. I'm also very open if you have specific information about admission requirements or English language proficiency requirements. And so these are some of the links for our Monash Graduate Research Office. That's the main university office that handles all of the admissions and scholarships. And we also have links to the Indonesian country representatives as well. So thank you, everybody, and please don't feel shy and contact us if you need further information.
Thank you, Sharon. That was a great presentation, very important information. I think now we'll go to our current PhD students, so we'll get a student perspective, and I'll introduce Mr. Hario Bisantaria. Hario is a PhD student in the School of Public Health and Preventative Medicine here at the university. He's also an academic staff member in the Department of Health Policy and Management at UGM, Universitas Gadjah Mada. He obtained his medical doctorate degree and Master of Public Health at UGM, specialising in hospital administration. He's also had various and a number of experiences working with national healthcare stakeholders on topics such as health workforce development and academic hospitals. His study at Monash is focused on harmonising Indonesian health and higher education stakeholders to work in an academic health system framework. And his topic today will be discussing successfully securing scholarship funding and managing personal finances and working part-time while undertaking a PhD program at the university. Over to you, Hario. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe, for your time. And yes, thank you all for having me in here. I'm sorry for all my colleagues in Indonesia. I will explain it on English. So mostly I will talk to you about how to secure the scholarships and also managing financial issues and also about the doing a part-time work in here. So Joe has already explained to me about my profile. Sorry. Yes, here's about me. Don't really matters about all of the working experience like that. I'm currently in the School of Public Health and Preventive Medicine. I'm undertaking my second year PhD, and I am currently in campus hospital. And because I will explain to you about the part-time work, I am very happy also to put my work part-time as a kitchen hand in one of the Indonesian restaurant in here as my working experience. So here's my email and Twitter, so you feel free to contact me. So first of all, I would like to tell you regarding my experience in securing scholarship funding. So I divide it into two sections. The first one is the pre-selection process, and the second one is the selection process. So in the pre-selection process, the one thing I did when I look for any scholarship is only about looking for any available, but not only available, but also eligible scholarships, and also what are their criteria. I usually, in my experience, collecting all the information regarding the criteria, regarding the priorities is quite essential. For us, maybe as a future PhD student, because it really maps you well on which scholarships suits you well. So there are lots of scholarships that maybe Ms. Riantisa of Professor Sharon has already described it there. And also Ms. Riantisa has already mentioned that it is very important to acknowledge any scholarship priorities. For example, me as an Australian awardee, I want to make sure that my project at least has impact on what are the priorities of the Australian award demand like that. So I think when you match with the priorities, it would be very helpful through the selection process in my experience. And also, it's important after you collect all the data, I myself make like a targeted scholarship. So there will be like 3 or maybe just two potential scholarships that I need to really focus on rather than doing lots more and more scholarships. And then we can't really concentrate on which scholarship we want to really dedicate into. And then the second part, as mentioned earlier, that communicate with potential supervisor is quite important because the key points of achieving scholarship funding for me itself is to have a clear project with potential impacts, and maybe specifically for Australia award itself, the impact to Indonesia, and maybe if working with university scholarship like that, they have like some certain indicators that we really need to achieve that. And it is important also if we could have the statement of interest. It's not about the document itself, but maybe when we do communication with our supervisor, at least the future main supervisor or the potential main supervisor will state in the email that he is really interested in your project. And I think it's quite important for you to have this kind of statement. And also, the third aspect is to prepare the documents. Like Ms. Riantisa say, that there are two, for me as Australia Award scholars, there are two websites. We need to submit in the two websites. So we need to prepare all documents and submit it in all required websites, because it sometimes that makes the administrative selection process not really completed because of those things. And the important part also for PhD is there are lots of documents need to be prepared, especially about the recommendation letter, about the project proposal, etc. So it is important to plan the submission strategically. So, and it is good for putting a reminder in each step. So I usually put a due date in my calendar, and then I track it day by day. So I still can measure that how many days left are for me before the due date. It is good to have submitted before the due date, but I need to track the due date. I think it's quite important. And for the selection process, there are not lots of things that we can do because it depends on the scholarship itself. But please make sure that in the scholarship selection process, you have already confident enough with your project. You have already discussed it and maintain your communication with your supervisor. Here's the thing about securing scholarship funding for me. And then how about managing personal finance? For me as Australian or scholarship scholars, I have these 5 of things. The tuition fee, monthly allowance, insurance, establishment allowance, and research allowance has already provided. But there is some variations between the scholarships, but at least tuition fee, monthly allowance, and insurance will be covered. But I can assure you that monthly allowance is adequate enough for you to live as a full-time researcher. So you don't have to look for anything else. But specific consideration if you bring dependents like spouse, like families, as Ms. Riantisa said, that the thing is because of the spouse and family is not really covered by the insurance, we need to make sure that we are settling in first, and then we it needs like some time money management, maybe more specific rather than living in here as one person. So my breakdown in living in Melbourne as a Monash PhD student is like this. So mostly the expenses will be about the accommodation. For me, it's around 35 to 40%. I use my spending in accommodations, and groceries are about 20 to 25%. If you can cook, it will help you well. If you're not a good cook, you will be an expert cook when you're being a PhD in here, because you need to really like limit your spending on food because it's quite expensive compared to Indonesia. So if you want to go to look for to a restaurant or to go out to other place, maybe on the weekend, I think you will spend about 10 to 15% of your allowance for it. There is also factor of public transport, maybe about 7.5%, and there are lots of things compared to 12.5%. To make it easier, I think it's good for you as a PhD student to use any financial tools, such as like lots of mobile apps currently in the App Store or in the Google Play Store that help you manage your spending day by day. I think it's quite essential also for the app and also from the website itself. But if you really want to calculate it in detail, I think you could access Monash University finance tools. And if you want to have a different opinion on the cost of living, you can also access the Monash cost of living in the Monash University website. So about the part-time work, yeah. So like I said earlier, that I work as a fan in one of the Indonesian restaurants. Subclass 500 student visa allows a PhD student to work part-time. So it's about 40 hours every 2 weeks. There are lots of opportunities in here about part-time work. You can do the academic jobs or non-academic jobs. When you want to do the academic jobs, it's mostly becoming a tutor or becoming the research assistant or something like that. If you want to do that, please ask your supervisor if you have already been a PhD student in here, and or maybe you can regularly check the faculty or school's newsletter. But if you want to do the non-academic job, you can ask the owner of the store, or maybe you look for any social media groups in here. There are groups specifically for Indonesians in Melbourne. There are friends and colleagues also. You can ask them, and also if you can ask the Monash Career Advisors about it. But my recommendation for you, maybe as a future student, before you apply a job, please consider that first that works need to be in line with academic status, or maybe works that are not interfere your study. So I think being a PhD student is being like is stressful enough. So you're not really. I'm not recommending you to take a job that use thinking as your main tool. So maybe you can do lots of physical job that will relieve your stress. So settle in first, understand your PhD working pattern, then looking for suitable part-time work for you. If you are still very confused, you can go to Monash Career Connect. But I want to remind you that you are full-time researcher. Your stipend has already covered you to live adequately, so part-time is like an optional one. So for being a PhD researcher is the main one. Okay, that's all my presentation. Thank you, Joe. And questions are welcome.
Okay. I might just get some of the questions for Fika. I'll have a look. Okay, hi Fika. If I'm not a lecturer, is it still possible to apply for an AAS scholarship or PhD?
The video cannot be started. Okay, I just gotta talk now. Oh, okay, it's working.
Okay.
If you're not a lecturer, it is still possible. So basically, we don't require only for a lecturer. So anyone can apply for the scholarships. So if you can meet all the requirements, that's also enough. So it doesn't mean that it's only available for a lecturer.
Thank you, Fika. So find a few more questions for you. Howard, okay. Quite a few questions here. Okay. My name is Haji Atul from Aceh, Indonesia. At the moment, I'm a lecturer at one of the private institutions focusing on English language education. Are there any kinds of issues for those who come from state institutions and who will get more priority of being selected and to get a scholarship than those from the private ones? I think that's one for Sharon, I think.
I would say there's no priority. I think that at least with the Central University scholarships, there's really no bias in that regard of those institutions. As long as you come from a reputable institution within Indonesia, I don't foresee that being an issue. I don't know if you, Joe, if you can comment about that.
We do look at quality of institutions when we do an assessment of applications. But we also, we do look favorably on private quality institutions. So that's what we're really looking at, is quality institutions, regardless of whether they're state or private. But we do recognise that the state institutions tend to have better quality, more research focus. So, but we don't discriminate. So we judge everyone equally in terms of their institution.
And we really look at your entire profile, if you like, your institution, your grades, any other evidence that you can show for, sort of being research ready.
Okay, I got another one for Sharon from Melbourne. May I ask, am I competitive for acceptance and scholarship if I have a H2A Honours Bachelor of Science from Monash, Malaysia, our sister campus, and a H1 coursework Master Science from the University of Melbourne?
Yes, so we would, with the scholarship selection committee, we always look for your last degree. And so the fact that you got an H1 for that Masters would really be that qualifying degree. So the fact that you got an H2A Honours, we understand that this happens, because that research experience also depends on your supervisory support and the team. So yes, you would qualify.
Great answer. Thank you very much for that. Let me see if I can get more scholarship questions. I'm aware that some universities apply the RA research assistantship schemes as one of funding alternatives. Does the RA scheme apply for PhD programs at Monash, Sharon?
Yes, so the fact that you've been an RA in that scheme previously, this would all provide evidence of your research readiness. So certainly please include this information because we do look for not only with your bachelor's or if you've done a master's or not, the fact that you've had that professional experience of an RA is also important for the sort of the total assessment of you as a PhD student.
Thanks, Sharon. One for Fika. Can AAS be applied for a second master's study if we have already done a master's degree previously?
Okay, it is possible, but we really need a justification and a very good reason why you need to apply for the second master's degree. Let's say your career now is not really related to your previous education background, so that's why you need more knowledge for it, and that can be possible for you to apply for the next scholarship. So the point is, it's possible, but we need more justification why you need to apply for a scholarship for your second master's degree.
Thanks, Fika. One for Sharon. Just lost it. Okay. Is it possible for a senior high school teacher to get a scholarship to apply for a PhD at Monash University?
Sorry, a senior high school
teacher.
So you must have done, and so we'd really have to look at the transcript. So you must have done a bachelor's and maybe some sort of additional graduate certificate or something for your teaching. So we would be looking at the duration of that bachelor's, and then once again any professional experience as well as the grade, of course. I'd have to really look at that one, I think.
Yeah. One from Christian. I have 3 IEEE conference papers. Is that enough to prove to a prospective supervisor that I'm able to do research? Sharon?
Yeah, so yes, certainly. And at the university, we're very accustomed to weighing up the HASS and STEM disciplines. So I am very aware that you know, IEEE abstracts or conference papers are considered impactful in the field, particularly business and economics or IT or such as engineering. So yes, certainly they are considered quite important in your field, as are papers in other fields.
Great, Sharon. Another question for Sharon, and this is about the process. Is it better to apply for scholarship first before applying for admission, or the other way around?
I would apply for everything together. So yeah. Do your online application and apply for admission, and all you do, there's a couple of check boxes. So you either apply for admission only or admission with scholarship. So check both, and if you don't get a scholarship, at least the faculty's considered your application and you'll be in the running for a faculty scholarship as well.
And also, if you go through the whole process and you only get an offer letter, you can then use the offer letter to apply for external government scholarships like AAS or LPDP. So that's quite a common process as well.
Yeah, that I actually don't know the answer to, because I think it'll depend on the scholarship scheme.
Well, they need, for most external scholarship, they only need the offer letter.
Okay.
So you generate the offer letter, then they've got evidence they've got a relationship with the university.
Yep.
Okay, I've got an AAS question. I would like to ask Fika whether the announcement of AAS was notified simultaneously to all applicants or gradually depending on the submission date of each applicant.
Sorry, can you repeat, Joe?
Okay, I would like to ask Fika whether the announcement of AAS was notified simultaneously to all applicants or gradually depending on the submission date of each applicant.
Oh, it will be simultaneously to all applicants, so we'll all meet together.
Okay. Another one for Sharon from Dion. Monash scholarships are very competitive. Is it true that unless we get HD for all subjects in our master's program, we won't be able to get a Monash scholarship?
No, I don't think that's correct. I think the Central University Committee really looks at the university you come from and then looks at your master's grade. I talked before about for auto H1E, so H1 equivalents, you need a combined GPA of 4.5 out of, 4.5 out of 5. So not necessarily. We do try to look at the entire package. We know that undergraduate grades or master's grades aren't the be-all, end-all, if you like. And certainly for a PhD entry, we're looking for evidence of, other things. So even awards or, the top 5% of class or your ranking class is considered important as well.
Great, Sharon, thank you. Question for Fika again. Is it mandatory to have a proof of communications with prospective PhD supervisors when submitting the application to the AAS?
Yes, it is. So it is one of the requirements. Like I said, it should be simple actually. So it doesn't have to be something very formal. So you just have to capture or screenshot from your communication, let's say from the email with the potential supervisor, and just showing the feedback that the potential supervisor is giving, or at least you're discussing a bit about the topic or the potential research proposal that you're going to do for your PhD degree. So basically just, it doesn't have to be an approval, like it doesn't mean that supervisor should be the one who will supervise you during your study, but at least they just give you a feedback and there is a communication, a more communication for your research proposal. So that's what we need actually.
Thank you, Fika. I think that's well answered. Okay, another one for Sharon. Is there a teaching requirement for PhD candidates at Monash, i.e. TAs or research assistantships that candidates must undergo if they're on a fully funded PhD scholarship?
Yeah, absolutely not. No. So as a PhD student, it's not mandatory to teach in the faculty that wherever you are. We do have paid employment, however, but that is voluntary. So if you feel that you want to contribute to teaching, normally as a demonstrator, for example, usually in the STEM disciplines you can, but we do not make you do lecturing or contribute to the teaching.
Okay. Hario, have you had experience with teaching and being a demonstrator at Monash?
So it's mostly for PhD student itself. We are not really, me myself is not really onto as teaching. It's the second year like students, but mostly we would also have like being a tutor, helping the course coordinator, right, to run some of the courses. I think it will be possible for us also to do it as a PhD students. But yeah, when the course happen, it might consume some of our work. So we need to ensure that all the work that we are really doing in a part-time work will not interfere our full schedule as a PhD student.
Very good advice. A question for Fika. Is there a PhD for pharmaceutical science? It's not a priority for the ARS scholarship program.
Okay, I mentioned this before. So your choice of major doesn't have to be the ones that are shown on the priorities list that I showed you before. So it just have to have any relation, or in Bahasa Indonesia we can say benang merah, or hubungan antara jurusan yang diprioritaskan dan yang pilihan teman-teman sekalian. So it doesn't have to be exactly like the list that we prioritize, but you can actually give your own reason, or again, justification why you want to study that major. It's still possible.
Right, thank you, Fika. Question from Nina from Malang. Does Monash PhD Scholarship for International Students also cover the OSHC, which is the International Healthcare, for students' family members, Sharon?
That I would have to check up on, actually, Joe. I believe it does. There's been some movement in the field, but yeah, I'd actually have to check up on that to see what's eligible.
Yeah,
or what's
I
available.
suspect you're right. I think we do have family cover for our PhD students. I'm not sure if the Australia Awards still has family cover for their program.
Mm.
No, we only cover for the scholarship awardees or the scholars, but we only report the visa fee for the family.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Okay, another question for Fika from someone who's very anonymous. Does IAS have an interview for its recruitment? Any tips to get a high score?
Okay, well, the tips is just that you have to really understand about your choice of study program and why you really need to do that, and all related to your previous application and the portal or the OASIS. So you really need to make sure you understand everything that you have written, and then you can explain it later on in the interview process. So actually the interview is just to test how much your understanding is about your goal. And of course, because this is a scholarship program, so we also want to know what you will do later when you finish your study.
Great, thank you, Fika. A couple of questions about English, so I'll probably have to get Sharon to answer this, but maybe Fika as well. Is there an English standard, IELTS and TOEIC, for submitting scholarships? Are they necessary?
Yes. So generally, this does differ a little bit per faculty. So for example, law and arts have a higher English language test grade, but generally a band of 6.5 with no band under 6 is you meet English language proficiency requirements. However, if you don't meet one of those bands, for example, in speaking or listening, for example, it's really writing is the one that we do look at. But if you don't meet one of the bands, then you can make, or the supervisor can make a case to the university with any other additional, supporting evidence for English. Yeah.
Okay, let's have a look. Is the English requirement proof needed as long as you undertook your undergrad studies in a university where English is the language of instruction?
Yes, that's fantastic. And before I was talking about any other additional evidence, I think that's the best evidence. If you can show that, you in a recent time have done your bachelor's or master's in an English speaking university, then you don't need to sit an English test.
And in some countries we recognise as being English speaking, so we'd give an exemption.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, I think I've answered that question. Time for just a couple of more questions. Okay, another one for Australia Awards. Oh, I just lost it. What should I consider if I want to bring my school-aged children during my PhD program?
Well, again, it's possible, like, for example, for the visa process that we actually support. But we might suggest to your children in a public school there, but maybe you can also ask, maybe Mas Haryo have your own opinion about your own experience, or maybe your friend's experience about that. Maybe you can help to explain.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please? Thank you.
Okay, about children going to school when you bring your children, during the PhD.
So actually I'm not bringing anyone in here, so it's not I don't have any experience about it, but also like because PhD like PhD life as PhD in here is I think it's quite flexible for us to really define what time of work we want to do, because it's not really fixed on like when we're doing undergraduate or postgraduate, especially in Indonesia with 9 you can really set your time. For me, as an experience, we can research as long as it is considered a full time a day. So if you want to really go to your bring your child to your school like that. And then I have some experience with some of my friends that that bring a child in here, and they're still can do, even though they are do the research on lab, something like that. So I think it's quite flexible as long as you really communicate it well with your supervisor, because I think being a PhD is being more on doing a mutual agreement with the supervisor. So I think it's quite important for us to ask the supervisor about it and ask for his suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Hariel. We've actually probably got 1 minute more. Okay, must Australia Awards awardees go back to Indonesia after they finish their PhD studies? What's the restrictions? Pick up.
Yeah, we do have a restriction, and we really require all Australia Award scholars to come back to Indonesia after they finish their study. So basically, there is we don't accept if anybody stays in Australia because of the visa itself, and it's not possible. So for a time of 2 years after their graduation, they can 2 years of study, but if it's for PhD, it can be for 4 years. So after 4 years of their graduation, they can go back to Australia to study, or other countries to continue their further studies or anything. But at least they have to go back to Indonesia after they finish their degree.
Thank you, Fika. One last question, and this is for Sharon. My master's degree was coursework only, and I didn't have a minor thesis as part of the final project. Do I have to take a matriculation before taking PhD, because scholarship does not cover it? How would you handle it?
Yeah, it's difficult with a coursework master's. We really do need to see a research component. Or was there a research component in your bachelor's, which could be considered? But yeah, we do need to see some sort of research component or outputs from your undergraduates or masters.
Thanks, Sharon. We're going to relaunch the poll. Continue. And let's do another polling. Okay, so that's the end of this session. At 12 o'clock, we'll have the third session, the PhD journey. So for now, please complete the polling. Thank you to all the presenters who gave their time and put effort into their presentations. I think it's good. And we'll have a break for 15 minutes, and we'll see everyone hopefully at 12. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all of you from Jakarta and Melbourne. Welcome to the third session of Monash Indonesia Talks, the PhD journey. This session will be an inspiring one to everyone who wants to pursue a PhD or doctoral study. This afternoon, we will have 3 valuable speakers. We have Dr. Sylvia Yazid, we have Dr. Howard Nance, and Pak Renaldi. And who are they? I will introduce them later on. We will have a quick question and answer session later on as well, and you can ask any relevant questions in the Q&A box. So our first speaker for this session is Dr. Howard Nance. So Dr. Howard Nance is a lecturer in linguistics in the School of Language, Literatures, Cultures, and Linguistics. He has written, co-written, or co-edited more than 20 articles and 4 books, with much of this work focused on Indonesia. He has supervised many master's and PhD students and coordinated undergraduate and postgraduate linguistics and Indonesian courses at Monash. So before coming to Monash, Howard worked as an English teacher in East Java and as an expert in Iranian language for US military. So Pak Howie, the time is yours now. Thank you.
Thank you, Novi, and hello to everyone. Paramisia, I'm going to share my screen so you can see my presentation. And there we go. So I will start this session by talking about supervising students from the supervisor's perspective. And then I'm going to talk about goals and motivations, and specifically how we can find those motivations that will keep us going for 3 to 4 years. The first thing that I wanted to point out is that we have lots of Indonesian PhD students here at Monash and students working on Indonesian issues. And I feel very lucky to work with each of these students. And the point that I wanted to highlight from the supervisor's perspective is that we recognize that each and every individual student has their own needs. Each and every individual student has their own goals and has their own motivations. And part of what I do as a supervisor is I try to better understand those goals and motivations, and I'm going to talk about that very shortly. But also, the second thing that I wanted to point out was that even for those students who are not my PhD students, we often work with other students who are doing Indonesian-related topics or any related topics ultimately. And that throughout my supervision, other PhD supervisors have introduced me to some Indonesian students who I have had the pleasure to work with on PhD projects, but also on greater research projects. For instance, I had the opportunity to work with Muhammad Iqbal on a project for the Australian government to better understand Australian-Indonesian relations. So these are the sorts of opportunities that you might encounter if you come and work with us at Monash University. So, from the perspective of the professional and supervising students, the sorts of things that I do and the sorts of things that I see as my obligation as a supervisor, the first thing that I will do if you contact me and if the interaction is positive and if I think that your project is something that I can supervise and contribute to and that we have a good relationship, is I will create a team of 2 to 3 world-class researchers, and we will have frequent meetings with each other. Normally these meetings will be every 2 weeks, but as we discover more about our relationship and the way that you work, what we will often do is I will give you the opportunity maybe to have more time. So you might find that you want me to stay away from you for a few more weeks so you can write, and that's okay. Other times you might want to meet with me every week when you're working on a particular point. And we will discover this as we are working together. The next thing that I will do as a research supervisor is I will create social networks for you. I have an obligation to create some social networks for you to work with and introduce you to fellow researchers working on the sorts of things that you might be interested in. So along those lines, what I seek to do is I'll try to provide a rich social and research environment for you at Monash University in Australia, but also working on my international connections. And those are the sorts of things that a research supervisor will do. I will also work with you to try to decide what are the best seminars or master classes for you to take. What sorts of skills are you really good at that you can help my other PhD supervisees, my PhD students with, but also what do you need a little more help with? These are the sorts of things that I try to manage as a supervisor, and I'm obliged and I love to help you with as a PhD supervisor. So to highlight once again something I mentioned in an earlier session, you and me are human beings in a relationship. It's not just a teacher-student thing, but we're in a long-term research relationship of 3 to 4 years. And this means learning how we function together. I have an obligation and you have a personal obligation to figure out, well, what motivates you or what doesn't motivate you? How do you respond to criticism or critique of your work? Is there a way that that sort of feedback can be provided better? Also, more broadly, how are you responding to living in a different country? Because it can be an overwhelming experience. Culture shock is real, and learning to exist in a different environment is a very real but invigorating challenge. But most importantly, you and I need to keep lines of communication open throughout the process. We need to talk to each other to try to ascertain how we can make sure that you reach your personal and professional goals best. Let's talk about goals and motivations. Ultimately, in entering into the PhD, you need to come up with an intellectual puzzle that will motivate you for 3 to 4 years. This isn't something that you can fake. You need to come up with a question, a piece of research that you can contribute, and something that you are passionate about. And part of the process is asking yourself, why are you doing this? And the more that you can make that motivation intrinsic, something that comes from within you, rather than extrinsic, people telling you that you have to do something, the better off you will be. If you're driven by your heart and your goals and something that you're passionate about, that will carry you through the process. So the next thing is to remember that doing a PhD is a process, and a lot of that process is learning about yourself, learning how you work, learning how you think. When do you read and think the best? What time of the day? I do it typically last thing before I go to bed because I like to have the ideas in my head. When do you write best? I do my best writing first thing in the morning after I get out of bed and play with the children, because that's when my ideas and passions are the freshest. What is your writing process? Are you the kind of person that needs to write very, very slowly? Or are you the kind of person that thinks about things and then writes very quickly? What is your revision process? Everybody revises everything. You don't write one piece of work and have that work be the perfect piece of work. You need to go back and rewrite and change and think about how you can say things better. And you need to learn the process that helps you do that, or rather how you do that best. But most importantly, what do you get excited about? Because once again, that intrinsic motivation that comes from within your heart and within your intellectual mind will the thing that drives you through 3 to 4 years of working on an intellectual puzzle. But also we need to remember that this isn't just setting big goals, it's setting lots of small goals to get to the big goals. So you need to think about those micro deadlines that help you meet the bigger deadline, to schedule things in your calendar, small goals to get to a big goal. But also to remember that you need to reward yourself when you do something really well. Even for those micro goals, never forget. You will also find it very useful to reflect and keep a journal. I find it's useful to do that in a written journal rather than a typed journal, because it forces you to slowly set out your experiences, and also you can't erase a written journal. Those experiences are real. But also, always remember, you need to live above, and don't forget that you're meant to enjoy the PhD process. You can lose sight of that in the middle of the process because you are working so hard, or sometimes you're not feeling motivated. But if you don't take breaks, then you will run out of power. So be sure to take breaks, live, love, learn, and remember that you love this process. A lot of people think they'll change the world with their thesis, and you might, but many of us, including me when I did my PhD, just got over the finish line, and this isn't failure. It's a big win on the way to changing the world tomorrow. So be realistic about your goals, and remember that surviving a challenge can be a victory that makes us stronger, and that will make us be perhaps better academics or better humans in the future. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and good luck to you on your journey.
Okay, thank you very much, Bahowi. It's a very great and insightful presentation that we about what we should expect in our PhD journey and about the intellectual puzzle that will drive us for the next 3 to 4 years. Okay, so our next speaker is now Dr. Sylvia Yazid, who is now with us. So Dr. Yazid has been a lecturer and a researcher at the International Relations Department of Parahyangan Catholic University, Bandung, since 2004. She is also currently the head of the Office for International Affairs and Cooperation at the university. Her Bachelor of International Relations is from Parahyangan Catholic University, and her Master's in Public Policy and Management and her PhD in Political and Social Inquiry are from Monash University, Melbourne. She has published on issues such as migration, democratization, and human rights. So, Ibu Sylvia, the time is yours now.
Thank you, Selfie. Nice to finally see you. And hello, Didi too. How are you doing? So, yeah, let me start with this. Ancora imparo, yet I'm still learning. That's the motto of Monash. And well, some of the Celebgram usually have giveaways. So let's see if you can find where this picture was taken later. If you go to Monash finally, tell me where you can find this logo. That would be interesting if you can send me a picture of it later. So my presentation today will be about conquering the PhD journey, and in bracket with a family on board, because that was what happened to me during my PhD journey. Okay, let's move on. So a glimpse of me. This is what has happened to me in the last 10 years. So the first picture with the writing examination is when I submitted my thesis, the draft of my thesis. And this picture coincidentally came up in Facebook today. So it kind of marked the 10 years after I submitted my draft. So I can say that the baby held by my husband is my first baby, and the PhD is my second baby, and the girl on the right is my third baby. Okay, next. How do I describe my PhD journey? It's an emotional roller coaster, sometimes frustrating, yet it's exhilarating. That's how I describe it. Why is that? First, let's take a look at the life as a PhD student. So this picture was taken from, I don't remember the program, what it's called, but it's a program where all the international students were gathered for an orientation course. Some language, some also about the culture, and also about the surrounding, how to get around, and also this is where I learned how to use, how to insert automatic table of content, how to insert references. So all the skills that we might need to while we are studying in Monash. And Monash has this program which I find really helpful in pursuing my journey. And then this is also what has been happening to me during my journey. I would like to say that take the opportunity to have a talk or to interact with other graduate students. Whatever forum you have in your faculty later or in your department, grab that opportunity. The picture on the top corner is a smaller gathering between international graduate students held in the Graduate Research Center, if I'm not mistaken. And that happened in the earlier months of my journey there. So even under 6 months. So whenever you get the opportunity to present something, go for it. And the bottom left, the one with the PowerPoint slide, if I'm not mistaken, that's in the lecture theater in Menzies building, the 11 building in Clayton. So I was really nervous that time because I had to face the whole lecture theater full, and with me being not even confirmed as a PhD candidate. So my supervisor pushed me, like Howie said, that my supervisor pushed me to be involved, to expose myself to the academic society. So gathering the courage to be there to present my ideas. And also with the field work, my research was on Indonesian migrant workers. So during my field work, I had the opportunity to go to Malaysia, and I had the opportunity to come to a forum held by a regional forum, a regional platform, which I had never dreamed of before my study. So the opportunity to go to the field, not only to get my data from Indonesia, but also to go to Malaysia to actually see what is happening with our migrant workers. I had more interesting pictures actually, but it's too graphic to show here. I got a chance to meet abused migrant workers in Malaysia that time. So this whole experience of actually going to the field to get first-hand data. Okay, yeah, this is the other side of the life. I think Sharon in the first session mentioned about how vibrant Melbourne is. So I got to experience culture. I'm really into watching shows, so I got to see shows in the theaters in Melbourne. And on the left is actually the bridge going to MCG. I might be wrong. I think it's MCG. So it's a connecting bridge going to the MCG, the stadium there. There was a footy event, but I didn't go to the footy event. I was actually working. So if you see the position, I was actually spreading brochures. So that's one of the activities that I did with friends to get some extra money. So we got to work there. If you had stories from those who have studied in Australia, many would say that, oh yeah, well, I work in a restaurant, I do cleaning and things like that. Being weak physically, I don't really go for that kind of job. I go for the lighter job, which is spreading brochures and things like that. And also, I got the chance to work in ABC, Radio Australia. So there's a section in ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Company, Radio Australia's Siaran Indonesia. So it's an Indonesian section. And I was quite lucky to be able to work there. And I used my connections with Monash to get interviews for my show in the radio. So I interviewed some of the scholars in Monash to fill the show with experts. And then my biggest nemesis, procrastination, of course. I remember that I got a room from at the Monash Research, the Graduate Center, and I was absent from my room, so I didn't go to the office. We call it office. I didn't go to the office, I think more than 2 months, because I enjoyed working from home too much. And I remember I got a call from the Research Graduate Center manager. No, not a call, an email asking whether I'm still going to use that office, because if not, then somebody else can use it. So procrastination is a danger, a really real danger for a PhD student. Having a fixed schedule, like how we suggested, like meeting every 2 weeks, or scheduling a meeting with your supervisor, is really useful. It will keep you on track. The other thing is loneliness. Because my topic was about labor migration, temporary labor migration. Nobody really know about the topic in Monash that time. Nobody seems to be familiar with what I'm researching on, because whenever we talk about migration in Australia, most people will talk about boat people, about how people migrate permanently to Australia. So that's what I have to find. I have to find other people to discuss my topic with. And it might not come from Monash. I might need to look for other scholars from other universities. Durability to ensure finishing. At some point during your 3 or 4 years journey, there might be a time when you will say to yourself, why, excuse my language, why the hell did I start this journey? And I think that's really common for everyone. People have these anecdotes about what a PhD is, and some of them say that it's a permanent head damage, or things like that. But for me, it's more like I see the journey to as a journey going through a tunnel, and with a tunnel, I want to exit from the end of the tunnel. So not from the exit on the sides. It means that I have to finish. That's what motivates me all the time. That there is no choice for me to not finishing. So I have to finish, and it has to be from the end of the tunnel. That what motivated me. Okay, how did I survive? Self-motivation, of course, and support from Monash. So this is the picture of the Monash Research Graduate Center at that time. I don't know whether it still looks like this right now. And if you can see the there standing on in the picture, those are the Indonesian students and their families. So before we left Melbourne, we made sure that we take a picture, and these were my support system too. There are lots of us there, so you can rely on them in motivating. And also keeping up with the PhD community. This is actually a lunch organized by my supervisor, and she made sure that every time somebody graduated from her team, she will conduct a lunch with all her supervisees. So I guess it's a way of celebrating, taking a break, but also motivating. And so it means that, hey, come on, finish your PhD so we can have a lunch like this for you. And finding the right supervisor. So these are the two supervisors that helped me through the journey. They work well with each other, and they might not be, so there are different types of supervisors. There are supervisors that take you to coffee or invite you to their home. And these two supervisors that I had, they're not like that. They are not that type of really sociable, friendly, close supervisors, but they're attentive. So I got pregnant when I was in Melbourne in the last year of my candidature. And I remember what Susan, my supervisor, said that, well, it's not really the best thing to happen in your last year of your PhD study, but congratulations. And I had a difficult labor. I was hospitalized for a while, and to my surprise, she came. I mean, like, she was not that informal, but she came when I had that difficult time. So that kind of relationship really helps. And it's not finished until it's finished. So my tips for you is tell yourself that I have to finish. Not finishing is not a choice. So it's only finished when you get to print your draft and sign it, and after the examination, revise your thesis if it needs revision. That's what you need to bear in mind all the time. And finally, PhD done. These are the pictures from my graduation, and I cannot describe to you how it feels to wear those gowns and the hat, because the hat for a PhD graduate is really different. So when you are in the crowd, you will stand out, and I can feel the pride of people saying, "Oh, look at her! She's going to get her PhD," and that feeling is really satisfying. And different from the master program, as you can see, we the PhD candidate get to sit with all the professors on the stage, not on at the audience. So this is really an experience that I will cherish for the whole of my life. So that's it. After the PhD, my life has changed a lot. I became, immediately after I get home, I became the secretary or the vice head of the department. I got a baby girl. I became a visiting professor in Germany. I became head of department. I continued researching, speaking, and doing community service. I applied for grants, and I did my publications. I applied for a grant, an alumni grant from Australia, and I became assessors and reviewers. And at present, I'm the head of Office for International Affairs and Cooperation in my university. Unfortunately, I've never been back to Aussie again. To look at it at from the bright side, maybe it allows me to expand, to spread my wings. I've been to Europe, I've been around Asia, so that's what Australia gave me, the ability to expand my experience and my knowledge and my skills. So that's what I can say for now. Cheers, all the best to you, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Ibu Sylvia. Very inspiring PhD journey, and I'm sure actually, personally, it's very touchy, and I'm sure that it will also inspire the other ladies in this webinar session. We have a question about that, but we'll bring it up later on. So I just want to remind all the participants to put the questions in the Q&A box instead of the chat. So now we have our last speaker for this session beside me, Renaldi, or you can call him Didi. So how are you, Didi?
Good, good.
Okay, so Didi is the International Alumni Manager for Indonesia at Monash University, where Didi manages the engagement and relationship with Indonesian-based alumni, meet and develop rapport with members of Monash alumni living in Indonesia. So Renaldi has been in this role for 2 years, and he really enjoys meeting with Monash alumni and also helping them to connect with each other. Renaldi's career to date has been in the education sector, and Renaldi has worked with reputable organizations, including the Cambridge Assessment International Education, British Council Indonesia, and Think Education Group. So he has degrees in business computing and business human resource management from Malaysia. It's a UK twinning program, and also Australia. So Didi, the time is yours now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Selvi, and hello everyone. Good afternoon from Jakarta, Indonesia. First of all, I would like to say thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of information about our alumni profile in Indonesia and also our alumni programs and benefits. Okay, to get started, let's share the screen for my presentation slide. Next slide. Okay. Okay, so when it comes to international alumni, myself and the alumni engagement teams at Monash University currently focusing on engagement activities in these top 7 international markets. Those markets are Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, China, Indonesia, US, and UK. The main reason why we selected these markets because they have a large number of alumni community living in each market. For example, Malaysia has the biggest number of alumni community living in the country. Well, I believe the reason is quite obvious because it is a combination of alumni graduated from Monash Australia campus and also Malaysia campus. And for Indonesia itself, currently we are the 5th largest community in the markets. Among those top 7 international markets, with around 4,724 alumni that recorded in our database. Okay, next slide. Now we're going to talk in general about some information or facts about Indonesian alumni. So 76% of our alumni are graduated from Monash Australia campus, and then 24% graduated from Monash Malaysia. And then the majority of our alumni, or around 62%, graduated from the Faculty of Business and Economics. And then, if not mistaken, the second biggest group are graduated from Faculty of IT. And then about the academic qualifications, around 52% they completed their undergraduate degree, 45% completed their postgraduate or master's degree, and then the remaining 3% completed their PhD or doctoral program at Monash. About the geographical locations, so majority of our alumni living in Java Island, and then the major concentrations basically living in Jakarta. And then mostly also they are located in East Java, West Java, and then around 5% around Sumatra Islands, and then 5% in Banten, and then there are also similarly 5% living around Central Java and Yogyakarta. The other remaining alumni basically scattered all over all other parts of Indonesia. And then regarding the gender split, it is fairly equal. So there are around 54% of male alumni and 46% of female alumni. Okay, next slide. Now we're going to talk a bit more specific about our Indonesian PhD alumni. So according to our database, we found that there are around 158 Indonesian PhD alumni. And then most of them, majority of them completed their PhD degree from 8 different faculties at Monash University. And if you look at the displayed graph, the first top 3, so majority of them are graduated from the Faculty of Arts, and then the seconds from Faculty of Business and Economics, and the thirds are from Faculty of Faculty of Medicine, Nursing, and Health Sciences. And the least are from the Faculty of Law. So around 8 different faculties that we can find our PhD alumni. Okay, next slide. Probably some of you are asking in which sector or industry the alumni currently working in. So, well, the interesting part, majority or around 3/4 of the PhD alumni are working in education and training sectors. Mostly they are working as academic staff, lecturers, educators, researchers, or even holding senior leadership positions in university or higher education institutions, locally, either both in private or public institutions. And then the second biggest group, or the second biggest groups are in government and public administration, and also scientific and technical activities. For example, in government, so some of the alumni are working in ministries or in government institutions. Okay, next slide. So sometimes I got questions from other alumni or from some people about who are your prominent or notable alumni from Indonesia that study at Monash University. So I can proudly say that there are quite many of notable or prominent alumni from Indonesia that completed their study at Monash. But if we talk about our notable or prominent PhD alumni from Indonesia, I believe these two figures could represent it. The first is Professor Dr. Mulyaman Haddad, and then the second is Professor Dr. Dewi Fortuna Anwar. As you probably know, that Professor Dr. Mulyaman Haddad currently serves as the Indonesian ambassador to Switzerland. And then Professor Dr. Dewi Fortuna Anwar is still active as a research professor at LIPI, or the Indonesian Institute of Sciences. And both of them basically also recipient of our Distinguished Alumni Awards. So the Distinguished Alumni Awards basically is to recognize the outstanding achievements and exceptional qualities of the university's graduates worldwide. Okay, the next slide. So in this slide, I would like to share briefly with you about our alumni programs and benefits that we are offering to our graduates. So basically, I classified them into 5 different groups. The first is alumni recognitions, for example, like Monash, the Distinguished Alumni Awards that I explained earlier. And second is volunteering. And then the third is mentoring. The fourth is professional development. And the fifth is news and networking. So from each of the group, you can find some example of the programs and benefits that we are offering to our alumni after they graduated. So for example, one of the latest programs that we are currently heavily promoting to our alumni is our alumni to alumni mentoring program. So it is open to Monash alumni all around the world. You can be mentor, mentee, or both, basically either to share your expertise of experience and so on. So this is basically what we are offering at the moment. So our alumni, for example, Ibu Sylvia Yazid previously sharing her experience to our monthly e-news, and also we are welcoming you to be also volunteer as a speaker, for example, in our professional talk or even graduation speaker. So if you want to look at the complete of our alumni program and benefits, you can visit the link below, or you can even ask me questions in the Q&A section or drop me an email if you have further queries about the alumni programs. Well, I think so far that's like I would like to share. So thank you so much for the opportunity again. So look forward to seeing you digitally or maybe face to face. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Didi. So now we're going to answer the questions that you have put in the question and answers box. So the first question is for Pak Howie. Pak Howie, the question is, if let's say in the second year of progressing with the research, the trend or the object of topic changed, has it happened before with the other students that you have supervised? And what would be your advice if it happened? Because I think it would affect the overall research, and I assume mentally for the researcher as well. So yeah, that's the overall question.
Honestly, your topic almost always changes. So honestly, if you begin with one question and answer and you end with a different question, or rather, sorry, let me revise that. If you start with the same question and answer and you end with the same question and answer, you are so unique in this process because that almost never happens. And you will find that over the course of the project that you will begin and you discover new things, you change your mind. you change the way that you view the world, which is part of the process of the PhD. And I think it's very important in the very beginning to accept that that will happen and to be open to it. You will be a very different person in many ways 1 year after you start, 2 years after you start, 3 years after you start. And I think you have to be open to that possibility. And the more open you are to that possibility, and the more open and willing you are to talk about that possibility with your supervisor, the better off you will be in terms of well-being, in terms of mental health, in terms of everything. Everything will change, and that's a beautiful thing. And it can be somewhat nerve-wracking in the beginning, but trust me, it's okay. And we've all been through it. And part of my job as a supervisor is to help guide you through what can seem to be a very, like gera in the Ramayana. It can seem so panic-inducing, but in fact, actually, it's a beautiful project of discovery. So, yeah, be open, be willing, and just expect that your project will change. And if it doesn't, that's amazing, but it doesn't happen often.
Okay, thank you, Pak Howie. Very interesting answer. Now I have the next question is for Ibu Sylvia, and I think it will be a relevant question to all mothers who are really thinking of doing PhD, because I know some of my friends who are thinking of it. So the question is, how did you manage your writing while you have baby and children? Did you write it in the midnight, or do you have babysitter for your children?
I couldn't afford a babysitter. But I could afford a really nice and helpful husband. Yeah, partners. Thank you, Howie. Partner is important. And I have to say this, that I prepared my husband before we left for Australia. And we were in understanding that I'm going to pursue my study, and he's not going to have his career. He's going to be there to support me. He was working as a laborer in a chocolate factory. So, and he was a manager back in Indonesia. So we had this long discussion that when you are there, you are going to not develop your career, and you are going to be there for me. Because, well, I guess it's better to share all the goods and the bads. And there are many cases when partners go there with you and not really supporting, but becomes a kind of a burden for the student. And it comes on the way of the study. So I guess talking to your partner from the very beginning, even before you leave, even before you apply, that will help a lot. And when do I write? Whenever I get the inspiration. And I remember this funny story when I was already in front of my computer, ready to write. You know how inspiration cannot come that easy. And I was really ready, and then the baby cried. And the husband was there, and I was looking at him sulking and saying, like, come on, keep the baby quiet. And his words that time was, if I can take your breast from you and plant it on me, I'll do it. I mean, sorry, I'm really being frank here, but there are some aspects of being a mother that cannot be changed. And there was, unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it, so I was holding my baby and typing at the same time.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, still related to that question, Ibu, because then you are a mother, when you were a PhD student, did you get some kind of special treatment from the supervisors or the research office just because you're a mother, or they treat you equally actually, just being as a PhD student?
Well, they did give me some time to, you know, recover, because my labor was quite difficult. But when it comes to supervising meeting, I have to come, and I come with the baby and with the holder and everything. Yeah. So baby was there, supervisor was there, and supervising meeting continues.
Okay, it's very tough, but you get the reward at the end. Yeah. All right. So the next question, I think it is relevant for both Holly and Ibu Sylvia. The question is about how do you keep yourself motivated during your PhD studies during that 3 to 4 years? Yeah. Maybe Ibu Sylvia first. You wanna answer the question?
Keep me motivated. Oh, well, I have to admit there were some period of time where I disappeared, totally disappeared. I mean, like I was off from supervising meetings and things like that, and I spent I don't know, things that's not just relevant to my supervisors. But then I have to come back. Like I said at the beginning, I have this motivation that I have to finish that way. I have to finish from that end, not from the exit door, which means that I'm drop out, or I don't graduate. Because there are cases like that. I mean, we have to admit that I know people who didn't finish. Oh, another thing before I forget, the Australian system is that you, especially if you are on scholarship, you have to leave Australia after you submit. It means that revision could be done when you are already in Indonesia. That is another dangerous point, because when you are already absorbed by work, by academic activities at home, it's another temptation to forget about your revision. So talking to your superior at the university or wherever you're working, that please give me time to do my revision, that might be wise. That's what happened to me.
Okay, thanks for the tips, Ibu. And Pak Howie, I'm sure that you often face demotivated students during your supervision, and we were wondering, like, how did you motivate them to keep, you know, to keep fighting for their PhD study?
Yeah, I think we all face demotivation, including the supervisors at points, and that's part of the process. Even in my own PhD, I think I almost quit twice, and then just ran into people who implicitly convinced me that it was a good thing to do because I had a good time with them. I realized that, you know, there were other people who were interested in the same academic topics as myself. So when you're trying to figure out what motivates the students, sometimes what motivates the students is letting them disengage for a little while. Sometimes students do need to disengage to decide whether or not it is for them. Because, you know, I know people who didn't complete. I myself almost didn't complete at points. And sometimes you need to realize that there is no shame, and sometimes the braver decision is stopping than actually going through with it if it's not the right thing for you. In terms of motivation, then sometimes with the students, I give them the opportunity to step back, but also I talk them through it. As I said earlier, part of the supervision relationship is that it's a relationship, and that you're a human being and they're a human being, and you have to find out why are they doing it. And then after perhaps talking through that, trying to get to the nature of what's demotivating them. It may not be the topic itself. It may be that they're going through a particular difficult patch as a mother, or as a family member, or that there are issues in the family. It might be illness. After you diagnose that sort of thing, you can go through and try to figure out, well, are you writing at the same right time of the day? You know, are you getting the right kind of support at home that can be provided? You know, you can guide them toward whatever it is that might motivate them. And ideally, as I said, part of my responsibility is making sure that as much as possible, I can help the student find intrinsic motivation, that motivation that comes more from the rasa than comes from, you know, universities telling you that you need to do this or that, or your company telling you that you need to do this or that. It ideally comes from within, and I have to try to help the students find that, and also acknowledge that we're all humans and it might not be the right path for the person.
Okay, thanks, Pahoe. So we have time for another 3 questions, and I also have question for Didi at the end of it. But now it's a kind of a technical question for Howie. So I'm doing toponomastic research now, but I meet difficulties to go to the field to do interview for language and culture. From your experience, what is the substitution data for that problem? Or what is new approach in culture research on pandemic times?
Yeah, isn't that an issue that we are all struggling with now? But on that particular topic, yeah, I mean, a lot of us are just accepting that Zoom, what we're doing right now is I hate to say the word, but the new normal, and that it is okay. And maybe there are some opportunities to be had in looking at, you know, talking to people and analyzing data via Zoom. The other opportunity is to think about other kinds of technology and how you might, you know, get your data or get your question answered via other means. You know, it would really ultimately depend on the question itself, because the question itself would guide your methods. I mean, if it's the right kind of topic, hypothetically, what kinds of words are people using to describe something? You could seemingly look at Twitter, you know, and if you're somebody who's very good at working R packages, you know, computational packages, you might be able to actually extract a significant amount of data via Twitter, via Compass or Java Posts. It really depends on whatever your question it is, but the advice, firstly, I would say that we're all struggling with this issue. You're not alone. There's a global research community that is asking a similar question. But in the second instance, think broadly, think innovatively, and just think of the technologies, the many technologies that we have at our hands. And if you've not learned how to use computational programs like R or Python, it might be a good time to begin learning.
Okay. Thanks, Howie. So I think the next question we can ask this to Ibu Sylvia for advice. So, so one of the attendees asking that I'm supposed to commence my PhD in education last month, but due to the pandemic, I have to defer my study and scholarship to June 2021 or next year. So while waiting for my departure, for the next 6 months to come, what can I do to prepare for it in Indonesia?
Enjoy the excitement. No, I'm kidding. Because I did ask the same question to my supervisor before my departure, and I said, what can I do to prepare? What should I read? What do I have to? How many literatures should I read? And she said, just come here. Maybe you can start by reading more about what you are going to research on. But as Howie said, that it might change. I mean, like, it's a process, it's a continuing process. That's something that I feel that we Indonesians kind of struggle with, to enjoy the process. We tend to write something and then finish. While in doing a PhD, it's more like a 4 years process of writing and going into deep to the same thing. You get bored, definitely. So I would say don't start too early. Maybe what you can do is to keep in touch with your supervisor from time to time, but also monitoring existing research in the field study that you are going to do is might be useful. So monitoring what is people publishing, what is new, what are people discussing about, that might be helpful.
Okay, thanks, Ibu. So I have one question for Didi, because his role day to day is meeting with alumni. So based on your meetings with alumni, they might tell you lots of stories about Monash universities, right? But we want to know here, like, what are their testimonials about Monash as a part of their PhD journey?
Okay, well, for PhD journey, normally the testimonials that I receive is mostly about the quality of the supervisors. So for PhD alumni, I think it's not only about picking the universities, and also about the destination, the study destinations of the country, and also maybe the tuition fees, but also the quality of supervisor. But so far, I received many positive testimonials from for our PhD alumni, not only PhD alumni, but in generally for alumni, generally for all alumni, all segments of alumni. So, and then one of the things that we are quite happy about the way we are supporting our PhD alumni, and now we are starting to give a free access to Monash libraries, because that's the feedback that I received from some of the PhD alumni that I met. So they gave suggestion that, well, if you want to maintain the quality of the alumni from Monash, why don't you give a free access to the Monash libraries? So finally, starting in the last 1st of January, we gave that free access, and so far the response is quite good also from the PhD alumni in Indonesia. So yeah, again, firstly, it's about, they always talk good things about the supervisors.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So it is very unfortunate that we cannot answer all questions. Actually, there are still, interesting questions such as, is 36 or 37 years old considered too old to start PhD? I'm sure that how is, so there's no limitation of age, right, Holly, for starting your PhD. Even we read an article that somebody who is 80 years old going back to school and start their PhD. Okay, so I want to thank you for all the speakers, to Howie, to Ibu Sylvia, and also Didi for filling up this session. And I'm sure my colleague will share also information about another webinar session tomorrow. So tomorrow we have the AIC event. So it's called Women in STEM. So basically, we will have all the speakers are ladies who are working and contributing in the STEM area. So you can visit our website page again to register for the event tomorrow. So I think we will conclude this session for today. Thank you very much, and we look forward to meeting you again in the next Monash Indonesia Talks or PhD webinar session. Thank you.
Thank you.